So welcome again to another podcast here at MARC Air at Soldotna Airport. And I am joined this afternoon by Brent Richardson. And we're going to visit about MARC Air and the influence that it has on its community and the greater community outside. So Brent, tell us about what the acronym means to start, what MARC Air actually does, its kind of history, and then of course the important part, your tie-in to both the director Peter and his wife Sarah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for asking those questions, and thank you for doing this podcast. MARC Air stands for Mission Aviation Repair Center, and where that acronym comes from was a gentleman who started this ministry back in 1964, so it's 61 years old. He was a mechanic, and there's missionaries that need to work on their planes up here. There were missionaries in the bush, and so he started working on them, and so he felt like, here's a calling, here's a need, and I have the skill set, and so that's what started the whole thing. Is it was more of a repair center than anything else.
Okay.
But since then, it's grown over the 60 years. It's grown to the point that really one of the main focuses is how can we share the gospel to unreached groups of people that are in the bush.
Okay.
There's over 200 and some villages. And the only way to get in and out would be by a plane or by a boat. That's it. There's only one road that leads all the way up to I forget where it is, like Nome, Alaska or something like that. But that's it. So if you need something, if you need eggs, milk, like we would just either Uber or we would go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
They don't have that luxury.
Wow.
It's not that convenient. And so MARC Ministries does a couple things. One is they will fly in supplies to missionaries. There's needs there. Also, if there's a medical need and they need to be flown out, they can ask for emergency help, and they can be one of the first to come in on them.
Okay.
But the other thing is that they do here, which is really the exciting part about it, is every summer there's Christian camps. There's about 10 Christian camps in Alaska.
Wow.
And every summer, these kids get the opportunity in these villages of only 150, and remember, this is all they know, for them to get the chance to hop on a plane and go to one of these Christian camps. And actually, it's like Disneyland to them.
Wow.
For a whole week. They have fun and games, they worship, and they hear the gospel message. And we're excited because we play a small part of that.
Right.
We will fly into a village, pick up maybe one or two kids, go back up in the air, and 15 minutes later, we're landed at the next village picking up kids.
Wow.
Well, all that costs money.
Right.
And we don't want to have that bill on them. They somewhat will have to pay for a little bit of this, but there's the camp fees, but then there's also the fuel costs, and there's also just the overall wear and tear on an aircraft because it has an expiration date.
Sure.
And so what we try to do is we try to underwrite that as much as possible so that they don't have that full burden. And so one of the things we have here is we have a training school. In that training school, what they do is they will train up missionaries. They will also train people that just want to have their pilot's license, and they will charge them.
Oh, wow. That's good.
But the beauty of it is that missionary is not getting paid because they're doing training. They already raised their support. So now when we charge for the training, that money gets to go in the coffers to help keep the lights on, pay for fuel for kids to go to camp to hear the gospel.
Right.
And so, like last year, we had a goal of over 500 kids we wanted to take to Christian camps.
Wow.
And we exceeded that goal last year.
Praise God.
And so, but that's expanding our fleet. Now, understand, back where I said, we have missionaries up here, and they're all raising their support. But they're raising their support for them. They're not raising any money for keeping the lights on, keeping these buildings going, keeping the planes fixed, the parts on them. So where do we get those funds? Well, that's where we have people that would do one-time donations, but we also have from the school and from other ways, we have a parts store here. That's how we kind of reel back some of those funds to where we can keep the lights on and we can do some of those other things as well.
And then you also have a great partner with Samaritan's Purse.
Yes,
Franklin
we do.
Graham.
Yeah.
Kind of elaborate on that particular connection with Franklin Graham.
Franklin Graham, his family's been friends with the Bass family for many years, and so they knew of Peter. And so when the MARC Ministries had lost their director here, they were floundering for about a couple of years. A connection was made where the Graham, they reached out to Peter and said,
Right.
would you consider? And then what they did was, on top of that, they said, and we know that it's more expensive to live in Alaska, and they have 4 boys. So they said, we will supplement your income for 3 years.
Wow.
And so that's how much Franklin really wanted Peter to take this position. And when he came in, it was rough. I mean, I was here that first year when Peter was here, and he was showing me the vision of what he wanted to do here. But it was rough. You have missionaries that were just doing their own thing. And
Wow.
so Peter comes in and he's like, okay, he's like, we're going to run a tight ship here. And
So kind of elaborate what Peter did in Cliff Note version, if you can, Brent,
Yeah.
that helps people understand the length and breadth of what this MARC here does.
Okay, I'll give you one example. So
Right.
when Peter came here, we did have 2 U-21s. They're a King Air. They're jet turbo props.
Okay.
They have expiration dates. As he was looking at these, he's like, okay, the hours that it takes for us to fly these kids every summer, he was calculating it up, and he's going, we only have maybe 3 years left of these engines before
Right.
you either have to do what is called a hot inspection on them,
Okay.
which that means you have to pull the engine. They got to basically like X-ray the thing and then inspect it to make sure it's good,
Yeah.
and then they'll give you a little bit of a lifespan on it. But that's I think it was anywhere from $50,000 to $80,000 per engine that you do that. Okay, I could be wrong on that
That's
amount,
okay.
but it's crazy.
That's a good idea.
But then, if you don't do that, there's an expiration date on these engines. Each engine to rebuild one of those jet turboprops is about $250,000. So you need $500,000. So for one of those U-21s. So when Peter took over, he was looking, and there was really no money. There was nobody was giving directions to that. And then how they were even charging on transportation fees, it was not even covering the cost of the wear and tear on the
Right.
plane. So he had to put a lot of systems in place at first just to make this company, this ministry, solvent. And so that took a lot of work.
Wow. So where is he drawing sources from to support a ministry
Yeah.
like this of this size right now?
Yeah, one is it's sharing the vision, sort of like what I'm doing with you is saying, look, we do all this for the opportunity for us to play a part in a ministry that is going to share the gospel with children that will come back to their village, and hopefully through that children we have a transformed heart that somewhere that's going to reach. Because here's the thing, we cannot just fly into a village if we're not invited. Okay, it's illegal. They even have big signs that said, do not land here unless you're invited.
So how do you get in? How does Peter and his crew or the missionaries get invited to land and even bring food and supplies?
Right. Well, first off, if all of a sudden their kid goes, I would like to go to a camp. I hear my friends are going to a camp. They get to go. And so you hope that kid, when he comes back, if his life is transformed as he's growing,
Right.
he's like, we would love to have a pastor here. We love it. Maybe, the kids even converts the parents. And so
Right.
it's a tough nut to crack, if I can use that analogy,
No, it's good.
of sharing the gospel
Right.
with I don't know how many years they've lived this way, hundreds of years.
Yep.
They lived this way, and they lived a certain culture, and not even understanding. Some of them had kind of a religious bent to them when Russia owned this back in the day, but for the most part, they're lost, and so we just feel an obligation to play a part in that. The other thing we do with the missionaries that are out there, if they have a plane, if they've established themselves in a village,
Right.
if they need repairs, they bring it in, and we don't charge them the regular fee. See, they're a missionary, and so what we do is we will charge them for parts, a little bit of an upcharge because we have a parts department.
Sure.
But then the labor basically is free, and which keeps their costs down. So as they've had to raise support, they're not spending a lot of their support money just to repair an
maintain
airplane.
their aircraft.
Yeah, to maintain their aircraft. And so that's another facet. And we also will train those missionaries if they want to go from a VFR to an instrument rating. we will train them here basically at no cost to get them trained in that, because it's all about safety. We want missionaries to be safe out there, and when crashes happen here, it's because not anything about the aircraft, it's about decisions that were made that they were not wise decisions. And so we try to downplay that as much as possible by training and educating. That's the reason why the room we're in right now is a lounge that anybody can come. If they're caught in weather, they can land here, they can come in this room, they can have something to eat, and they can sleep on the couch.
Right.
Because we don't want them to try to push through a weather situation.
No. And so a question for the general public, for all of us, how do we and where can you break out the kind of the needs that we have, that people who obviously can't be missionaries, who can't come out, would love to fund through a 501c, either providing an aircraft or providing some degree of financial support, or like your parts department. Break out for us where you feel there's the greatest need, that people who are listening to this afternoon say, well, I can do that, but I can't do this, but I can do that. Right. Can you give us that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So one of the things that we've established about a year and a half ago is an endowment. And what an endowment is our goal is to raise up to $3 million of this endowment and never touch the principal.
Okay.
If we can do that and we invest that money and we only use the interest, that interest is what would pay for the fuel for an aircraft to go pick up kids, to transport them over to a Christian camp for the summer for them to hear the gospel. Okay. And so it will help underwrite those fuel, because as we all know, gasoline is not cheap.
Nope.
And so, but we still don't want to have the burden of that on that kid or that family.
Correct.
Because they won't take them. If it's like, hey, it's $1,500 to fly you, to this Christian, they're like, no, we're not going to do that. But if we can underwrite a lot of that, and the Graham Foundation, the Samaritan's Purse helps us with that, and so that's where we keep it at a minimum. There still is a little bit of a fee, but it's reasonable for them to spend that kind of money to have their kid go to camp.
So let me ask the question then. So what does it cost, for example, to sponsor one child, or sponsor? Let's just do, because you got 500. So people love to do the sponsoring with the one. We have them all over the world, Pakistan and India and places like that. Right. So if someone's hearing you this afternoon right now and they say, Brent, I would love to sponsor one of those children, where would they go to do that within MARC Air?
Yeah, it wouldn't be technically sponsoring a child. It'd be more like I would give to this endowment, which whatever it would be, that's going to help underwrite the fuel costs.
Okay.
For us to fly out to those villages to pick up those children, to take them to camp. Now, we say 500, but understand that there's 10 camps and there's other people that fly, maybe their personal planes, they'll pick up kids, but we're the only ministry out there that probably has a large chunk of kids that we take to Christian camps all over Alaska.
Wow.
And our fleet is growing from that standpoint. So that's one of the biggest things that we do. The other things we do is, that's not the only ministry.
Oh, no.
We have a band that comes in the wintertime, and suicide rate is really high in villages.
Oh, even out here?
Even out here, suicide rate is really high, because think about it. If you're a young teenager and you're stuck in a village of 150 and that's where you live, but you have dish, you have satellite, you have internet, you're seeing what the world's like. And when they see that, it can be depressing at times, especially in the wintertime when the sun hardly ever comes out.
Right.
That's depressing. And so suicide rate is really high.
Okay.
So we have a band that comes up here every year, and they will charter with us. They pay for their own costs. But these pilots will fly with them. They'll spend a week going to different villages, having a band out there, and then talking to them about prevention of suicide.
Wow.
And really encouraging these kids to think about those things, and that this is a permanent decision to a temporary problem that you're having.
Right.
So we do things throughout the year. Another thing that we've done in the past, and I've wanted to be a part of it, is we'll fly into the wintertime to a village that's invited us, and the missionaries will go and cut wood. Now you go, okay, what's the big deal about cutting wood? Well, see, there's churches out there, and there might be a local pastor that's going to preach at that church. In the wintertime, if you don't heat that church, they will not come, and they won't go cut the wood. And so the missionaries will go, they'll say, we'll cut a bunch of wood that we'll put in the church to make sure that you have fire so you can heat the church so that people can come in and hear the gospel.
Wow.
Okay. So that's another aspect that they do, even in the winter time when the Christian camps are not going up.
So when those crews go up, I'm just curious, having me from a mainline airliner, the crews always have somewhere to go. So when these pilots go up, the first and second officer,
Yeah.
do they have places to stay when they go to all these remote villages,
Right.
Brent?
It's a matter of what you think a place to stay is. This is not a Motel 6. This is not. They will bring a sleeping bag and sometimes even a cot, and it might be sleeping in the local church. If somebody is hospitable enough, they might be able to sleep on their couch.
Okay.
And hopefully somebody might make them a meal.
Wow.
But they might bring some little MREs for themselves, but that's about it. And so, just like up here, we just had, 2 crews out for 4 days, and that's what they were doing. And so,
Wow.
so it's not a walk in the park when they're like, "Hey, hun, I'm going to be gone for 4 days," and they're in some Motel 6 watching Netflix at night. That's not what
the
these
case at
guys are
all.
doing.
Wow.
No.
So when we ask critical questions like, do you have enough pilots within MARC Air? Do we have enough mechanics?
Right.
If someone that is listening by just sheer chance from a
Right.
major airline company, right, or a major producer like either Airbus or Boeing,
Yeah.
what would you say they would need in addition to what
Yeah.
they have? Because I heard from a previous mechanic who was talking to us, Derek, the other day, that the fleet is about 50 years old right now,
Yeah.
though it's maintained meticulously
Yes,
on
yes, it
all
is.
rounds.
Yes, it is.
So they would. What do you think, having been here
Right.
now for how many years
Right.
you've been since 2015?
Right.
How many more aircraft would they need so they can take on more people versus having the 1 or 2 pilots do multiple tasks?
Well, here's the thing. And that's a really good question. It's like church. A church should never stop growing, right?
Amen.
Because you're trying to expand the kingdom.
Amen.
Well, up here, we're trying to expand the gospel.
Amen.
And so the more planes we have, the more kids we can pick up, the more kids have the opportunity to hear the gospel. So,
Okay.
so that's where it is. And and there's always more of a need than there is planes. And so that's the reason why we always want to look at, what's the next plane that we can get. And sometimes it's some gracious donors. We've had donors give us $500,000. We've had other donors donate planes that we fixed up and sold and used that money to actually buy the type of plane we have.
Okay.
We just bought a King Air 200, which is a pressurized one for I think it was 1.3 million. And so these planes aren't cheap, and they're not brand new. And so from that standpoint, we want to continue to expand the fleet, but then along with that is the other problem is we'd have to build a bigger hangar.
Okay.
The hangar we have barely holds the fleet that we have. If we add more to it, there's going to be one of those big planes sitting outside. And the problem is summertime it's not a big deal. Wintertime it's a really
Severe.
big deal when it gets -20, -50 outside. It really does a wear and tear on those planes. And so the more you can keep them inside and protected, the better off that they will be. And so that's our goal, to continue to grow the fleet, and from a financial standpoint. And this podcast is one of those ways that somebody might hear. Somebody might have money that they're like, okay, Lord, where should I spend it? Well,
Amen.
to spend it here, just know you're spending it in a way that this is going to help more children hear the gospel. And so that's really our primary thing that we want to do. Yes, we help missionaries, we repair planes, but really the summertime, it's for them, it's their Super Bowl is the summertime around
Wow.
here. And that's where I bring up teams in the summer. And what we do is we say, where do you need help? Because summertime's when construction happens here, because you can't really do anything in the wintertime. You can't
Nope.
pour concrete, you don't do anything in the wintertime. Well, that's the time when they're really flying.
Right.
So our goal is to come up here and say, where do you have a need? And so that's why I bring teams up every year here.
So as we close today, Brent, what can you just capsulate for us? Everything you've said that will really resonate with these folks as they go away, the Christians to pray and think about it, the corporations, the individuals to say, what can I do? As you said, a great analogy, a church never stops growing, it keeps growing, just like our church, just keeps growing. So what would you tell folks hearing you this afternoon that would encourage them to step back and ask themselves, is this my calling? If it's not, can I still contribute on a monthly or regular basis? or help towards the endowment.
Yeah.
And then where do they go to get that as
Right,
well?
good. First off, if there's pilots out there that they really feel like, maybe this is my calling, they can contact MARC Ministries. And they just go to marcalaska.org.
Okay.
That's the same place that they can, donate. They can read about the mission of the church, the ministry. They can read about the staff. Each one of the staff pictures up there so they can get a good idea. And if they want to come up, free of charge, they can come up, buy their own ticket, but we have a place for them to stay. We'll give them a vehicle so they can come and just see what we're all about. And so that's the best way. If there's a family out there that's thinking of doing this, I would, highly encourage them to come up and take a look at this.
And then again, also, if the churches out there that want to contact you at
Yeah.
Cornerstone and come up and support and do stuff, and then of course later on this year you're doing fishing, so
Yeah.
that's going to be a bonus for the teams as well.
Yeah.
Brent and his crew normally come up in July, and so they work them to death during the day. Then they go out fishing.
Yeah.
So Brent, thank you for spending your time and really opening up the onion, so to speak, of
Yeah.
what MARC is all about.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. So folks, you've heard what Brent's got to say. I really beseech you as a firm believer in this particular ministry that you reach out to MARC Air. And if you need to reach out to Brent, we were happy to respond back to you as well. Blessings to you and thank you again.